The billionaire's voice cut through the room with icy finality. I don't shake hands with staff. It was a moment charged with arrogance, a dismissal so blatant it left the room stunned. But what happened next wasn't just unexpected, it was historic. Moments later, a black woman, underestimated and overlooked by the very system built to exclude her, secured a staggering $3 billion in backing. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a seismic shift, a powerful statement that would ripple far beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. Marcia Whittaker wasn't born into privilege, nor did she inherit influence or wealth. She was an ordinary woman with extraordinary resolve, standing at the crossroads of systemic barriers and boundless possibility. When a wealthy titan of industry publicly dismissed her and the community she represented, it was more than a slight. It was a challenge, a call to rise. Behind her calm exterior was a strategic mind and a heart committed to something far greater than herself. Marcia's mission wasn't merely to win a deal. It was to rewrite the narrative for her community, to pull back the curtains on forgotten potential, and to prove that perseverance, vision, and unity can overcome even the most entrenched walls of power. This is a story about more than billions of dollars or boardroom politics. It's a story about belief. Belief in a better future, belief in the strength of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and belief in the power of personal responsibility and leadership to spark lasting change. As the world watched, Marcia's journey became a testament to what happens when courage meets opportunity, and when hope refuses to be silenced. I want to tell you a story. Not the kind you read in headlines, but the kind that lives in quiet corners of neighborhoods. A story about leadership, not from a podium or a tower, but from the sidewalk, from the front porch, from the heart. This story starts not with a handshake, but with the refusal of one. It was a warm spring evening in a small community tucked between the ridges and railroads of Charlotte, North Carolina. The HOA was hosting its quarterly meeting in the rec center. Fluorescent lights flickering overhead, rows of folding chairs filled with people who cared enough to show up. And she was there, Marcia Whittaker, a quiet woman in her early 50s, always dressed smartly, always on time. Marcia had lived in the neighborhood for 18 years. She wasn't flashy, she didn't speak often. But when she did, people listened. She was the unofficial heartbeat of the block. That evening, a billionaire developer had been invited to pitch a revitalization project. The HOA board was intrigued. New condos, fresh capital, green spaces, retail corners. The kind of pitch that comes wrapped in promise. The billionaire arrived late, surrounded by lawyers, assistants, and consultants. He walked into that room like he owned the land beneath it. He shook hands with the board president, the treasurer, the developer. When Marcia extended her hand to greet him, as vice chair of the HOA, he looked her over and said, "I don't shake hands with staff." A silence dropped over the room like a stone in still water. He moved on. And Marcia, she said nothing. Not then. But what the billionaire didn't know was that Marcia Whittaker managed portfolios for 3 of the country's most significant Black-led investment foundations. She was no staffer. She was the gatekeeper of the capital. She had earned her seat not with a title, but with trust. That night, she went home and made a phone call. Then another. Then 12. Within 3 days, $3 billion of private funding was quietly pulled from the billionaire's backing network. No press release. No outrage, just clarity. The project collapsed before the next board vote. Not because of the scandal. Not because of drama. Because a woman of quiet strength understood that leadership isn't about being seen. It's about seeing everyone. But that's not where the story ends. Because the true power of community doesn't lie in revenge. It lies in resilience. Marcia didn't use that moment to elevate herself. She used it to uplift her neighborhood. She gathered local developers who were from the area, architects who understood community planning, youth leaders who dreamed in murals and skate parks. Together they reimagined the project, not to gentrify, but to glorify the spirit of the people already there. They rebuilt. Not just sidewalks and storefronts, but trust. We talk a lot about leadership in HOA meetings. We debate the rules, the regulations, the budgets. But the real question is, who are we becoming? We become what we choose to protect. We become what we choose to stand for. We become the kind of community where every hand is worth shaking, every voice worth hearing. We are not powerless. We are not invisible. We are not staff. We are stewards of the land, keepers of the gate, architects of belonging. So, when someone tells you that you're not enough, that your voice doesn't matter, that your place at the table must be earned with pedigree and power, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't lower her standards. She simply pulled the lever that only she could pull. In a world where power often masquerades as volume, where shouting the loudest is confused for leading the strongest, there remains a deeper, quieter kind of authority. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that doesn't have to walk into a room with a brass band, a social media following, or $1 million contract. The kind that moves deliberately, listens deeply, and acts only when the moment calls. True power doesn't rush. It doesn't fidget. It doesn't seek validation from applause or from those who mistake flash for wisdom. True power watches. It absorbs. It waits until the time is right, and then it changes everything. That's what happened the day Marcia Whittaker stood in that room, extended her hand, and was denied a simple gesture of respect. No gasps, no protests. Just a moment, a flicker, a refusal. And in that refusal, the room learned something about the man with the $1 billion portfolio. But they also learned something far more lasting about the woman he dismissed. Because when she lowered her hand without fanfare, when she took her seat without comment, well, she wasn't surrendering her dignity. She was sealing his fate. It's easy to mistake silence for submission. To think that those who don't retaliate are too weak, too timid, too small to respond. But real power doesn't always need words. Sometimes it speaks through consequence. The kind of power Marcia carried wasn't in her title or her resume, though both were impressive. It was in her self-awareness. In her ability to absorb a blow without shrinking. In her decision not to make a scene, not because she lacked the right, but because she had already seen the bigger picture. She knew that her power didn't depend on his acknowledgement. She didn't need his handshake to legitimize her presence. She had already earned the trust of the people who mattered. And that trust was built not on ego, but on consistency, integrity, and results. This kind of power doesn't always command the spotlight, but it shifts the foundation of the room. It changes the direction of conversations. It calls people to their better selves, not through fear, but through example. You see, loud power can dazzle, but quiet power endures. Loud power fills the air. Quiet power fills the room. Loud power boasts. Quiet power builds. We live in a culture that often rewards those who take up space, who interrupt, who dominate, who throw their weight around. But true leadership often lies in restraint, in knowing that you don't have to win every battle to win the war. In knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when to let your silence carry the weight of truth. Marcia's power wasn't there at that moment. It was in the years before it. In the nights she stayed late to read through financial disclosures no one else wanted to understand. In the trust she built with institutions who saw her not just as a name on a letterhead, but as a steward of vision and values. In the way she showed up to community events not as a figurehead, but as a neighbor. That's the power no one can see coming, because they don't believe it's real until it reshapes everything. And by the time they recognize it, it's already moved. True power doesn't ask permission to lead. It doesn't wait for the gate to be opened. It doesn't plead for seats at tables built to exclude. It brings its own blueprint, its own materials, and lays the foundation for something better, something lasting. You can tell a lot about a person by what they do when they're disrespected. Some shout, some retaliate, some walk away. And some, like Marcia, simply lower their hand and pick up the phone. Because when you know who you are, when your work has already spoken louder than any insult ever could, you don't need to clap back. You just move. That's what real power looks like. It's not in the headlines. It's in the silence that follows the arrogance. It's in the ripple after the stone is thrown. It's in the eyes of the ones who've been overlooked for far too long, until they choose to be seen on their terms. It doesn't announce itself. It just changes the terms of the conversation entirely. Dignity is often spoken of as a lofty ideal, something reserved for speeches or philosophical debates. But in reality, dignity is the quiet, steady foundation beneath every human interaction, the unshakable core that defines how we see ourselves and how we allow others to see us. It is not a gift to be granted. It is a right that belongs to every person, regardless of status, title, or circumstance. When the billionaire dismissed Marcia with those cutting words, "I don't shake hands with staff," he was doing more than refusing a handshake. He was denying her dignity. He was signaling that in his eyes, she was less than invisible, unworthy of respect. It was a microcosm of a much larger problem, a reminder that in many places, too many people are still judged not by their character or contributions, but by assumptions tied to their identity or their role in a hierarchy. Dignity, however, cannot be borrowed or borrowed away. It cannot be given only to some and withheld from others without fracturing the very fabric of community and trust. When dignity is compromised, it isn't just a personal wound. It's a social fracture. When someone is dismissed as staff, support, or less than, it's not only their dignity that suffers, it's the dignity of the entire group. What makes dignity foundational is that it is the soil from which respect, trust, and collaboration grow. Without dignity, conversations become confrontations. Cooperation becomes coercion. Leadership becomes tyranny. It's impossible to build a community, a business, or a nation without first recognizing the inherent worth of every individual. Marcia's response to that moment of disrespect reveals something profound. She understood that demanding dignity is not about confrontation or pride, it's about self-recognition. It is the act of knowing your value so clearly that no external insult can diminish it. It is the decision to carry yourself with grace, not because others have granted you permission, but because you owe it to yourself. In the world of home ownership associations, business boardrooms, and everyday workplaces, this truth is everywhere. The neighbor who quietly organizes cleanup days, the volunteer who attends every meeting despite being overlooked, the staff member who stays late to prepare reports, all of these people embody dignity in action. They do not wait to be recognized or rewarded. They lead by showing up, by caring, by doing what is right even when no one is watching. This dignity, rooted in humility and strength, becomes contagious. It shifts cultures, transforms environments, and elevates expectations. When people are treated with dignity, they respond with loyalty and commitment. When communities honor dignity, they build resilience and hope. When organizations insist on dignity, they unlock innovation and progress. But dignity is fragile. It can be eroded by small acts of neglect, by microaggressions that whisper, "You don't belong here," by systems that prioritize profit over people. Each slight chips away at the foundation, risking collapse. That is why it is not enough to simply avoid disrespect. We must actively cultivate dignity. We must create spaces where every person, whether a billionaire or a custodian, a board member or a neighbor, feels seen, heard, and valued. We must build policies that honor fairness, communication that fosters inclusion, and leadership that leads with empathy. Marcia's story is a testament to this truth. Her refusal to be diminished was not a singular act of defiance, but a lifetime of embodying dignity. It was evident in the way she listened to every voice in the neighborhood, in the careful stewardship of funds, and in the unwavering belief that everyone deserved a seat at the table. Not because of wealth or power, but because of their humanity. In the moments that followed the billionaire's slight, dignity became the foundation for transformation. It became the reason she could mobilize billions, not through anger or vengeance, but through the quiet assertion that her worth, and by extension, the worth of those she represented, was non-negotiable. Dignity challenges us to look beyond titles and stereotypes. It asks us to recognize the full humanity in everyone. Even when society has trained us to see only categories, it demands that we hold ourselves and others accountable for the ways we affirm or deny that humanity. In every handshake, every word spoken, every decision made, dignity is the standard by which we measure justice. It is the silent contract that binds communities together or tears them apart. When we understand that dignity is foundational, we begin to see why moments like the one Marcia experienced matter so deeply, not because of the insult itself, but because of what it reveals about our collective values. It forces us to ask, how do we treat the people who work alongside us? How do we honor the contributions of those who don't fit the mold? How do we ensure that respect is a given, not a privilege? The answer lies in a commitment to dignity that is unwavering and universal. It requires personal responsibility from each of us, to speak up when dignity is denied, to listen when voices are marginalized, and to act when injustice threatens the very core of our shared humanity. Every community is a living structure, built not just from bricks and mortar, but from the hopes, actions, and values of the people who inhabit it. We often think of architects as those who draft blueprints and design buildings, but the truth is that we are all architects, not of physical structures alone, but of the communities we call home. Each decision we make, every conversation we engage in, and the way we treat one another shape the invisible framework that holds our neighborhoods together. The power to build and rebuild our communities rests in our hands, much like Marcia's story shows us. She did not wait for permission or external forces to dictate the fate of her neighborhood. Instead, she took ownership of the process, drawing upon the strength of the people around her and the vision of a future that honored everyone. This is a lesson for every homeowner, every member of an HOA, and every person who calls a place their home. Communities are not passive environments, they are living ecosystems, and their health depends on our active participation. When we understand this, though we recognize that our actions, or inactions, are the blueprints of what our neighborhoods will become. Imagine a community where the people believe their voices do not matter, where meetings are sparsely attended, where concerns are whispered but never raised. Over time, the foundations weaken. Projects move forward that don't consider the needs of the residents. Conflicts grow, trust erodes. Contrast that with a neighborhood where people gather, not out of obligation, but out of a shared sense of purpose. They listen to each other, weigh different perspectives, and craft solutions that respect the history and diversity of their home. They take care of public spaces, support local businesses, and mentor the young. They hold each other accountable and celebrate each other's victories. This is what it means to be an architect of a community. Every individual has the power to influence the shape of their environment. The way Marcia leveraged her role wasn't about wielding authority for control. It was about building consensus, bridging divides, and creating opportunities for others to contribute. Leadership in community is not a solo endeavor. It is a collective effort that requires humility and vision. It calls for listening to voices that have been silenced, inviting participation from those who have felt excluded, and recognizing the strengths in diversity. A true architect of community understands that no single person holds all the answers, but that together, the sum is far greater than its parts. This perspective also reframes the role of an HOA. Often criticized as bureaucratic or adversarial, an HOA can instead be the scaffolding that supports community growth and resilience. When led with empathy and clarity, an HOA becomes a place where residents come together to protect their shared interests, maintain their environment, and inspire each other toward common goals. At its core, being an architect of community means embracing responsibility, not as a burden, but as an opportunity. It means understanding that the decisions made in boardrooms, on sidewalks, and at kitchen tables ripple outward. They affect safety, property values, social cohesion, and even the dreams of future generations. Marcia's story illustrates this beautifully. She recognized that the billionaire's proposal, though dazzling on paper, failed to honor the real, life fabric of the neighborhood. Instead of accepting a top-down plan that risked displacement and erasure, she rallied local stakeholders who understood the soul of the community. Together, they crafted an alternative vision, one that celebrated local heritage, created affordable housing, and invested in education and jobs. This is the kind of architecture that lasts. It is not imposed, it is grown. It is not designed for profit alone, but for people. In every community, there are countless unsung architects. Parents organizing carpool schedules, volunteers painting murals, neighbors watching over each other's homes during vacations. These everyday actions are the bricks and mortar of belonging. We are reminded that the power to build is not limited to those with formal titles or financial capital. It belongs to anyone who chooses to care, to act, and to believe in the possibility of something better. When we see ourselves as architects, we no longer passively accept conditions that harm our neighborhoods. We advocate for better schools, safer streets, cleaner parks. We speak up against injustice, support local entrepreneurs, and nurture the next generation of leaders. Being an architect is also about foresight. It means thinking beyond immediate convenience or gain, to consider the long-term health of the community. It means balancing progress with preservation, innovation with tradition. In this way, the act of community building becomes a powerful form of stewardship. It demands that we invest not only our time and energy, but our imagination and compassion. To be an architect of a community is to embrace the truth that we are all connected. Our actions affect not only ourselves but our neighbors, our children, and the generations yet to come. It is to accept that our role is not simply to occupy a place, but to shape it, with intention, care, and courage. Leadership is often portrayed as the ability to command, to decide swiftly, to project confidence and vision. While these qualities are important, they are incomplete without one essential, often overlooked skill: the ability to listen deeply and with intention. Leadership means listening first, not as an afterthought, but as the very foundation upon which all effective guidance is built. Listening is a powerful act. It requires humility, patience, and the willingness to step outside one's own perspective. It demands that we set aside assumptions, biases, and the urge to interrupt or respond immediately. In the quiet space of genuine listening, we create room for understanding, empathy, and trust to flourish. Consider the story of Marcia Whittaker and the billionaire's dismissive remark. What many saw as a simple insult was also a missed opportunity, a failure to listen. The billionaire failed to see beyond his own assumptions. He did not hear the history, the contributions, or the potential of the woman before him. He missed the chance to understand the community through her eyes. Leadership that listens first refuses to make that mistake. It knows that every person in the room carries a piece of the puzzle. It recognizes that wisdom is not confined to titles or wealth, but is scattered among neighbors, staff, volunteers, and those whose voices are often overlooked. Listening first is especially critical in community leadership, such as in an HOA setting, where diverse interests, backgrounds, and priorities intersect. The neighborhood is not a monolith, it is a mosaic of stories, needs, and dreams. To lead effectively, one must hear those stories in their full complexity. When leaders listen, they build trust. People feel seen and valued. They become more willing to share ideas, voice concerns, and collaborate toward solutions. This openness is the fertile soil from which innovation and consensus grow. On the other hand, leaders who fail to listen breed frustration and disengagement. Decisions made in isolation risk alienating those they are meant to serve. Communities fracture. Progress stalls. The potential for collective strength diminishes. Marcia's leadership exemplifies listening first. She had spent years attending meetings, visiting homes, and sitting quietly with residents. She knew the unspoken worries about displacement, the subtle hopes for safer streets, the deep pride in local culture. She understood not just the what of her community's needs, but the why behind them. This deep listening gave her the insight and credibility to mobilize a coalition that no flashy presentation could match. It was not just her financial acumen that made the difference. It was her rootedness in the people she represented. Leadership that listens first also means creating spaces where diverse voices can be heard. It requires intentional outreach to those who may feel excluded, whether due to age, language, socioeconomic status, or other barriers. It involves asking questions, inviting feedback, and being open to change. Listening is not passive. It is active and courageous. It often means confronting uncomfortable truths, acknowledging past mistakes, and being willing to shift course. It demands vulnerability from leaders who must balance confidence with openness. Moreover, listening first means understanding that leadership is not about having all the answers. It is about facilitating conversations that lead to better questions, broader perspectives, and shared ownership of outcomes. This approach can transform communities. It turns meetings from battlegrounds into forums for collaboration. It empowers individuals to contribute their unique talents and insights. It nurtures a culture where everyone feels responsible for the community's well-being. In the story of the billionaire and Marcia, the failure to listen was a costly error. But the success that followed was grounded in the power of listening, of hearing what was not said aloud, of recognizing the strengths in the community, and of building from that foundation. For anyone in a leadership role, the lesson is clear: listen first, speak second. It is in listening that leaders gain the clarity to act wisely, the humility to serve sincerely, and the vision to inspire genuinely. Listening is the doorway to empathy. Empathy is the seed of connection. Connection is the bedrock of community. There is a powerful misconception that greatness belongs only to the famous, the wealthy, or those born into privilege. Yet history, time and again, shows us that the most profound changes, those that reshape communities, nations, and hearts, are often sparked by ordinary people who choose to act with extraordinary courage, conviction, and kindness. Marcia Whittaker's story is a vivid example of this truth. She was not born into a dynasty of wealth or power. She did not walk into that boardroom wielding inherited influence. She was, simply put, a woman who showed up every day, ready to do the hard work that others might overlook or avoid. And in doing so, she changed the course of a billion-dollar deal. Her journey reminds us that extraordinary leadership is not a matter of birthright or title. It is a matter of choice. It is the decision to stand up when others sit down, to speak when others stay silent, and to persevere when the easier path is to give up. Think about the countless individuals who labor in the background of our communities. The single mother balancing 2 jobs, but still volunteering at the local school. The retired veteran who mentors troubled youth. The janitor who greets every resident with a smile and makes sure their home is safe and clean. These people may never make headlines, but their impact is monumental. When ordinary people step into their power, remarkable things happen. They become the heartbeat of neighborhoods, the glue that holds fractured communities together. Their actions ripple far beyond their immediate surroundings, inspiring others to believe in their own ability to create change. This phenomenon is not limited to grand gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes, the extraordinary lies in small, consistent acts: a kind word, a shared meal, a willingness to listen. It is in the daily decisions to choose hope over despair, unity over division. Marcia's ability to pull together a $3 billion backing was not just a testament to her financial savvy. It was a reflection of the collective strength of those around her. She understood that real power comes from mobilizing community, from harnessing the diverse talents and passions of ordinary people, united by a shared vision. Her story mirrors countless others who have reshaped history by refusing to accept the status quo. Rosa Parks' quiet refusal to give up her seat, Malala Yousafzai's relentless pursuit of education despite threats, ordinary citizens organizing relief efforts after natural disasters. All are examples of ordinary individuals igniting extraordinary change. What makes these stories so compelling is their relatability. They show us that heroism does not require superhuman abilities, only human determination, empathy, and resilience. Moreover, the collective impact of ordinary people is often underestimated. Change is rarely the work of a single individual. It is a chorus, a movement, a symphony of many voices and actions blending together. Marcia's success was made possible because she lifted others up, so created platforms for voices to be heard and trusted in the power of community. This is a crucial lesson for all who aspire to make a difference. It reminds us that waiting for permission or perfect conditions is a trap. Waiting for the right person or the ideal moment delays the change we so desperately need. Instead, so we must recognize our own power, the power embedded in our choices, our actions, and our willingness to persist. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things is the lifeblood of progress. It is the reason neighborhoods thrive, businesses grow ethically, and societies move toward justice. It is also a reminder that we do not have to be flawless or all-knowing. We simply need to start, to commit, and to keep going even when the odds seem against us. In communities around the world, countless Marcias are waiting to be seen, not for their flaws or limitations, but for their courage and capacity. When we honor and support ordinary people doing extraordinary things, we plant seeds for a future where everyone has the chance to lead, contribute, and thrive. Perseverance is the quiet engine that drives progress forward, especially when the road ahead is steep, uncertain, and strewn with obstacles. It is not a flashy quality, nor is it often celebrated in headlines or speeches. Yet without perseverance, even the brightest ideas and boldest visions falter before they reach fruition. Marcia Whittaker's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance in the face of adversity. When the billionaire dismissed her with the cold words, "I don't shake hands with staff," it was a moment that could have crushed her spirit. Many might have walked away, swallowed the insult, or chosen silence over struggle. But Marcia did something far more difficult. She persisted. Adversity comes in many forms: rejection, prejudice, self-doubt, systemic barriers. For Marcia, it was all of these, compounded by the weight of historical and social biases that too often marginalize people like her. Yet she did not allow these challenges to define her or limit her potential. Instead, she embraced them as part of the battle, knowing that perseverance was the only way forward. History is filled with stories of individuals who persevered through extraordinary hardship and ultimately transformed the world. Consider Harriet Tubman, who escaped slavery yet returned countless times to lead others to freedom, or Nelson Mandela, who endured decades of imprisonment only to emerge as a beacon of reconciliation and hope. What sets these stories apart is not just the obstacles faced, but the unwavering commitment to the cause despite those obstacles. Perseverance is not a single act of courage, but a continuous choice, a daily decision to keep moving forward, even when progress feels slow or invisible. In the context of community leadership, perseverance is crucial. Challenges will arise, whether in the form of resistance from those in power, limited resources, or disagreements within the group. The path is rarely smooth. Yet those who succeed are those who refuse to be deterred. Marcia's story demonstrates how perseverance works in practice. She continued to build relationships, gather support, and develop her vision even after the initial rebuff. She understood that change rarely happens overnight, and that setbacks are not signals to quit, but invitations to adapt and press on. Perseverance also means resilience, bouncing back from failures and disappointments with renewed energy and clarity. It requires emotional strength and the ability to see beyond immediate circumstances to the possibilities that lie ahead. In many ways, perseverance is a form of hope in action. It is the belief that what we do today, no matter how small, contributes to a larger, better future. It is the refusal to surrender to cynicism or despair. Communities thrive when their leaders and members embody this spirit. When neighbors support each other through difficult times, advocate for improvements despite bureaucratic hurdles, and continue to show up when it's easier to walk away, they create a foundation that can withstand storms. Moreover, perseverance is contagious. When people witness others pressing on through hardship, it inspires them to do the same. It fosters a culture of determination and grit, encouraging more people to become active participants in the life of their community. This quality is often invisible in the moment, but unmistakable in its results. It turns ideas into reality, conversations into action, and dreams into tangible change. For Marcia, perseverance meant believing in her worth and her vision even when powerful forces tried to diminish her. It meant transforming indignation into strategic action, turning rejection into a rallying cry for inclusion and respect. Her perseverance became the bridge between a moment of exclusion and a movement of empowerment, demonstrating that adversity is not the end, but often the beginning of something greater. This lesson is crucial for anyone striving to make a difference. The road will not always be easy. The voices of doubt will often be loud. But perseverance means listening to a different voice, the one inside that says, keep going. In a world often divided by differences, whether of race, culture, background, or beliefs, the true strength of any community lies in its ability to embrace and harness the power of unity and diversity. This is not simply a hopeful ideal, it is a practical, proven strategy for resilience, innovation, and progress. Marcia's story unfolds against a backdrop of diversity, racial, economic, and social. The billionaire's dismissal of her was not only a personal slight but a reflection of the deep-seated prejudices and divisions that can fracture communities. Yet, what followed was a remarkable demonstration of how diverse voices, when brought together with respect and purpose, can create something far greater than the sum of their parts. Unity in diversity means more than tolerance or coexistence. It means actively seeking out and valuing different perspectives, recognizing that no single viewpoint holds the monopoly on truth or wisdom. It requires openness, humility, and the courage to build bridges rather than walls. When communities cultivate this mindset, they unlock a wealth of creativity and problem-solving potential. Diverse groups bring a variety of experiences, skills, and ideas that can challenge assumptions and inspire new solutions to old problems. This principle played out vividly in the way Marcia mobilized her community. She reached across lines of difference, race, class, age, profession, to forge alliances. Instead of allowing divisions to dictate the narrative, she created spaces where people could come together, listen deeply to each other's stories, and find common ground. This process of unity through diversity is both challenging and rewarding. It requires confronting uncomfortable truths and biases. It demands patience when misunderstandings arise. But it also builds trust and mutual respect, which are the foundation of lasting relationships and shared goals. The power of this unity can be seen throughout history. From the civil rights movement to the formation of inclusive democracies, diverse coalitions have been essential to overcoming injustice and creating change. When people from different walks of life unite with a shared purpose, they become a formidable force. In neighborhoods, this means recognizing and celebrating the rich tapestry of cultures, languages, and experiences that define the community. It means ensuring that decision-making processes include representatives from all groups, not just the most powerful or vocal. Marcia's leadership reflected this belief. She did not seek to replace one form of exclusion with another. Instead, she championed inclusivity. making sure that the billions she helped secure were invested in ways that benefited everyone, not just a privileged few. Unity in diversity also strengthens social bonds. It creates a sense of belonging and shared responsibility. When people see themselves reflected in the leadership and decisions of their community, they are more likely to engage, contribute, and protect what they have built together. This collective strength is vital in facing the challenges that communities confront. Whether economic uncertainty, environmental threats, or social unrest, diverse communities that stand united are more adaptable and resilient. Yet, achieving unity in diversity is an ongoing journey, not a destination. It requires continuous effort, dialogue, and a willingness to learn and grow together. It calls on each individual to move beyond comfort zones and to embrace the richness of difference. So Marcia's example shows us that when unity and diversity becomes a guiding principle, it can turn moments of division into opportunities for collaboration and hope. It transforms isolation into connection, conflict into conversation, and difference into strength. The lessons embedded in this principle resonate far beyond any single neighborhood or boardroom. They challenge us all to rethink how we engage with others, how we build communities, and how we envision the future. In a diverse world, the ability to unite across differences is not just desirable. It is essential. In every thriving community, there lies an unspoken pact, a collective understanding that while leaders may guide, the true strength of the community depends on each individual embracing their own role. This is the essence of personal responsibility, recognizing that the health, safety, and future of our shared spaces are not solely the burden of a few, but the duty of all. Marcia Whitaker's journey vividly illustrates this call. When faced with dismissive arrogance and systemic barriers, she did not wait for external saviors or perfect circumstances. Instead, she took ownership, not just of her own fate, but of the welfare of her entire community. Her actions remind us that change begins with a single decision to act, to step forward even when the path is uncertain. Personal responsibility is not about blame or guilt. It is about empowerment and agency. It acknowledges that while we may not control every factor, we do control how we respond. It means asking ourselves, what can I do today to make my community better? This mindset shifts the narrative from one of helplessness to one of possibility. It dispels the myth that individuals are powerless in the face of complex problems. When each person accepts responsibility for their role, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, the collective impact is profound. Consider the everyday acts of stewardship that often go unnoticed but are vital: the neighbor who picks up litter without being asked, the parent who mentors a child, the resident who attends meetings to voice concerns and ideas. These are acts of personal responsibility that build the foundation for thriving neighborhoods. Marcia's success was rooted not only in her vision, but in her willingness to bear the weight of responsibility personally and publicly. She understood that leadership is as much about accountability as it is about inspiration. This principle resonates deeply within the structure of HOAs, where shared ownership is essential. Homeowners have a responsibility to participate in governance, maintain their properties, and respect communal rules designed for the good of all. When individuals shirk these responsibilities, it weakens the collective fabric and leads to discord. On the other hand, when residents embrace their roles, the HOA becomes more than just an administrative body. It becomes a true community builder. It fosters pride, cooperation, and resilience. Personal responsibility also extends beyond tangible actions to the attitudes we carry. It challenges us to confront our biases, to communicate honestly, and to treat one another with dignity and respect. These attitudes are the invisible glue that binds communities together. Marcia's story reminds us that taking responsibility is not always easy. It often requires sacrifice, courage, and persistence. But it is through these acts that individuals transform from passive observers into active architects of change. Moreover, Personal responsibility invites us to think beyond ourselves and consider the impact of our actions on others. It calls us to be mindful of how our choices, whether in voting, consumption, or social interactions, affect the collective well-being. In a world where many seek quick fixes or external solutions, this call is a grounding force. It reorients us to the truth that sustainable change is built from the bottom up through consistent, conscientious effort. When communities embrace personal responsibility at every level, they build resilience against challenges that no single leader or policy can solve alone. They cultivate a culture where every member feels valued and empowered. Marcia's leadership exemplifies how personal responsibility fuels perseverance, fosters unity, and ignites the kind of change that endures. It is a call to each of us to recognize that our contributions, no matter how small, are vital threads in the fabric of community. This call is not a burden, but an invitation to believe in our collective power and to act with intention and care. At the heart of every transformative journey lies a simple yet profound force's belief. The belief in a better future, one that transcends present struggles and obstacles, fuels the resilience, creativity, and hope necessary to drive change. It is this belief that transforms despair into determination and obstacles into opportunities. Marcia Whittaker's story embodies this belief. Despite facing dismissive attitudes, systemic inequities, and seemingly insurmountable barriers, she held onto a vision, not just for herself, but for her community. She believed that change was possible, that resources could be mobilized, and that people could come together to build something greater than the sum of its parts. Belief in a better future is more than wishful thinking. It is an active, deliberate choice. It requires courage to imagine possibilities beyond the status quo and conviction to pursue them, even when evidence suggests otherwise. This kind of belief nurtures hope, which is essential for perseverance and action. Throughout history, some of the most significant breakthroughs and social movements were sparked by individuals and communities who dared to believe that a different, better world was possible. From the abolition of slavery to the fight for civil rights, from women's suffrage to the environmental movement, belief has been the catalyst that sustained efforts through setbacks and opposition. This belief is not naive optimism, but a pragmatic faith grounded in the understanding that progress is a process, often slow, sometimes painful, but ultimately rewarding. For communities, belief in a better future creates a shared sense of purpose. It aligns efforts, inspires collaboration, and fosters resilience. When people believe that their actions matter and that a better tomorrow is within reach, they are more likely to invest time, energy, and resources into collective endeavors. Marcia's leadership was shaped by this forward-looking perspective. She didn't just react to the billionaire's dismissal. She envisioned how her community could rewrite its story. Her ability to rally support for a $3 billion investment was rooted in her capacity to inspire others to share that vision. This belief also influences how communities approach challenges. Instead of succumbing to fear or resignation, they see obstacles as temporary setbacks, opportunities to learn, and signals to innovate. They understand that failure is not the opposite of success, but a part of the journey toward it. Moreover, belief in a better future nurtures inclusivity. It invites everyone to contribute, knowing that diverse talents and voices are essential to creating lasting change. It fosters an environment where dreams are valued and possibilities explored. At the individual level, this belief empowers people to take personal responsibility and leadership. It shifts the mindset from, "What can I do?" to, "What must I do?" It encourages proactive engagement rather than passive observation. This perspective was critical in transforming the dynamics of Marcia's community and the investment she secured. It was not simply about money, but about investing in people, infrastructure, and hope. In moments of doubt or conflict, belief in a better future serves as a compass, reminding communities of their shared goals and the potential that lies ahead. It strengthens bonds and sustains motivation. This belief also carries an intergenerational dimension. It is about building a legacy, creating conditions that future generations can inherit with pride and opportunity. It is a promise to those who come after us that their lives can be better because we dared to believe and act. While belief alone does not guarantee success, it is an indispensable ingredient. Without it, despair takes hold, apathy grows, and the will to act diminishes. Communities that cultivate this belief become engines of change, resilience, and hope. They break cycles of poverty, exclusion, and stagnation. They demonstrate that no matter the challenges, a better future is possible when people come together with vision and resolve. Marcia's story reminds us that belief is a choice available to all. Not just leaders or visionaries, but every individual who desires change. Leadership is often misunderstood as a position of power or authority. However, at its core, true leadership is about service, vision, and the ability to inspire others toward a common purpose. It is this type of leadership, rooted in empathy, integrity, and courage, that has the power to ignite transformation in individuals, communities, and entire societies. Marcia Whitaker's story is a profound example of how leadership functions not as an act of domination, but as a catalyst for collective empowerment. When confronted with the billionaire's dismissive declaration, "I don't shake hands with staff," Marcia chose not to retreat into bitterness or anger. Instead, she demonstrated leadership by focusing on a larger vision, one that transcended personal slights and aimed to uplift her community. Leadership in inspiring change begins with a clear and compelling vision. A leader must see beyond the present challenges and articulate a future that resonates with the hopes and values of those they serve. This vision acts as a beacon, guiding efforts and galvanizing commitment even when obstacles arise. Marcia's vision was not merely about securing financial backing, it was about reclaiming dignity, opportunity, and a sense of belonging for her community. Her ability to communicate this vision with passion and authenticity attracted allies and created momentum. But vision alone is not enough. Effective leadership requires the courage to act decisively and the humility to listen deeply. Marcia exemplified this balance. She engaged with diverse stakeholders, respected differing perspectives, and built coalitions grounded in trust and mutual respect. This inclusive approach to leadership fosters a sense of ownership among community members. When people feel heard and valued, they become active participants rather than passive recipients. They invest their energy and talents, transforming visions into tangible outcomes. Leadership also involves resilience, the capacity to withstand setbacks and maintain focus on long-term goals. Marcia's perseverance in the face of rejection and doubt illustrates how leaders must navigate adversity with grace and determination. Moreover, inspiring leaders recognize the importance of empowering others. They do not hoard power but distribute it, cultivating new leaders and strengthening the community's collective capacity. This approach creates a ripple effect, ensuring that change is sustainable and rooted in shared responsibility. Inspiring leadership is also marked by emotional intelligence, the ability to empathize with others, understand their needs, and respond with compassion. Marcia's empathy allowed her to connect authentically with a wide range of people, breaking down barriers and fostering unity. Another critical aspect of leadership is integrity. Leaders who act consistently with their values build trust and credibility. Marcia's commitment to fairness and inclusion was evident in every decision she made, reinforcing her legitimacy and inspiring confidence. Leadership in the context of community transformation is not about individual glory, it is about servant leadership. It calls for putting the needs of the community above personal ambitions and being willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. Furthermore, effective leaders are visionary problem solvers. They anticipate challenges and innovate solutions that balance immediate needs with future sustainability. Marcia's strategic approach to securing a $3 billion investment was not only a financial achievement, but a visionary plan for long-term impact. Leadership is also about storytelling, the ability to craft and share narratives that inspire hope and action. Marcia's story became a powerful narrative that challenged stereotypes, uplifted marginalized voices, and invited others to believe in the possibility of change. Finally, leadership in inspiring change demands accountability. Leaders must be transparent, admit mistakes, and remain answerable to those they serve. This fosters a culture of trust and continuous improvement. In every community, leadership can emerge in many forms, not just elected officials or executives, but neighbors, volunteers, and everyday heroes. Marcia's journey shows us that leadership is accessible to all who are willing to step forward with courage, vision, and heart. Change, especially on a large scale, rarely happens by accident or chance. It is the product of careful planning, a strategic vision that anticipates challenges and opportunities, and bold action that turns ideas into reality. This combination, vision married with courage, is what drives transformation and shapes the future. Marcia Whitaker's journey underscores this truth in a powerful way. After being dismissed so coldly by the billionaire, she could have accepted defeat or chosen a safer path. Instead, she harnessed her strategic insight and took bold, calculated steps that ultimately secured a $3,000 billion backing for her community's development. Strategic vision is the ability to see beyond immediate circumstances and map out a path toward long-term goals. It requires foresight, an understanding of the broader context, potential risks, and available resources. It is about asking not just, what is, but what could be. Marcia's vision was ambitious but grounded in realism. She understood the structural inequalities her community faced, but refused to let those define their future. She envisioned economic empowerment, improved infrastructure, educational opportunities, and a renewed sense of pride. This clear and compelling vision served as a rallying point for stakeholders, investors, and residents alike. However, vision alone is insufficient without action. Boldness in action means stepping into uncertainty with confidence, making decisions that challenge the status quo, and taking risks that others might avoid. Marcia exemplified this when she pushed past the billionaire's initial rejection and instead crafted a proposal that was impossible to ignore. Bold action also requires resilience because not every step will succeed immediately. It involves learning from setbacks, adapting strategies, and persisting with determination. Marcia's approach was methodical. She built alliances, gathered data, refined her plans, and communicated relentlessly until she achieved the breakthrough she sought. The interplay between strategic vision and bold action creates a dynamic momentum. Vision sets the direction, inspiring and aligning efforts, while bold action generates tangible progress and confidence. Together, they transform abstract ideas into concrete impact. This principle applies not only to large-scale investments but to everyday community initiatives. Whether it's organizing neighborhood clean-ups, launching educational programs, or advocating for policy changes, a strategic mindset combined with decisive action is what moves the needle. Marcia's story also highlights the importance of balancing ambition with collaboration. Strategic vision often involves multiple stakeholders with differing interests. Bold action includes the capacity to build coalitions, negotiate, and inspire shared commitment. Leaders who master this balance are able to transform resistance into partnership and create solutions that are sustainable and inclusive. Marcia's success in securing billions in backing was not a solo effort, but the result of uniting diverse voices under a common purpose. Moreover, strategic vision and bold action are essential in addressing systemic challenges that communities face, such as economic disparity, racial injustice, and environmental degradation. These complex problems demand innovative thinking and the courage to pursue unconventional paths. This approach encourages communities to move beyond short-term fixes and toward transformative change that reshapes social and economic structures. It challenges complacency and invites continuous improvement. Marcia's leadership demonstrated that with the right combination of vision and action, it is possible to rewrite narratives of neglect and marginalization. Her story became a beacon for others, showing that strategic thinking and boldness are powerful tools for empowerment. Communities that embrace this mindset create environments where innovation thrives, risks are calculated but not feared, and opportunities are seized with urgency and wisdom. Finally, strategic vision and bold action remind us that change is an active process requiring both imagination and execution. It is about dreaming big and then rolling up one's sleeves to make those dreams real. The essence of any inspiring journey lies not merely in the recounting of triumphs, but in the stirring call to action that follows. The moment when hope transforms into purposeful movement and dreams translate into deeds. It is the invitation extended to every individual to step forward, to contribute, and to become a vital part of a shared mission toward a better tomorrow. Marcia Whittaker's story offers more than just a narrative of overcoming adversity and securing unprecedented financial backing. It is a beacon illuminating what can happen when ordinary people embrace extraordinary responsibility. It beckons each of us to recognize that the power to create change resides within ourselves and that our collective future depends on the choices we make today. A powerful call to action taps into the deepest wells of human aspiration. It connects with the yearning for dignity, justice, and opportunity that lies in every heart. It asks us to move beyond passivity and to become active participants in shaping our communities and our world. This call is not reserved for leaders alone, but extends to every member of society. So it recognizes that no individual act is too small when it is motivated by commitment and shared purpose. The neighbor who fosters kindness, the volunteer who dedicates time, the parent who nurtures resilience in their child, all contribute threads to the fabric of progress. Marcia's example illustrates that bold visions and large-scale achievements are built on countless small acts of courage and dedication. It is the accumulation of these efforts that propels movements forward and breaks down barriers. Importantly, this call to action is grounded in hope, not despair. It affirms that despite obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt, the possibility of change endures. It invites us to believe in our collective strength and the enduring human capacity for innovation and renewal. To answer this call requires personal responsibility, the willingness to ask, "What can I do to help?" It demands active engagement, from participation in local governance and community organizations to advocating for policies that uplift marginalized voices. It also calls for unity, recognizing that while we may come from diverse backgrounds and hold different views, our shared destiny binds us. Progress is a collective endeavor, and division only weakens the potential for meaningful transformation. This call challenges us to harness empathy and to listen deeply to those whose experiences differ from our own. It reminds us that true progress is inclusive and that justice and opportunity must be extended to all, not just the privileged few. In practical terms, the call to action translates into organizing, educating, volunteering, mentoring, and standing up for equity. It involves holding institutions accountable and demanding transparency and fairness. It means embracing innovation and sustainability in how we build and maintain our communities. Marcia's success was not an endpoint but a catalyst, a starting point for continued engagement and empowerment. Her story teaches that every victory in the pursuit of justice and equity sets the stage for further progress and must be met with renewed energy and dedication. This call to action is also deeply inspiring because it respects the dignity and potential of every individual. It trusts that each person, no matter their circumstances, has something valuable to contribute. It encourages stepping out of comfort zones and embracing the discomfort that often accompanies growth and change. At its core, the call to action is an affirmation of hope, a belief that through perseverance, unity, and personal responsibility, a better future is within reach. It is a reminder that the story of progress is still being written and that each of us holds a pen. As communities respond to this call, they become living examples of resilience, innovation, and compassion. They create environments where success is shared, opportunities multiply, and everyone has a chance to thrive. Marcia's journey invites us to move from inspiration to action, from hope to effort, and from vision to reality. It beckons each of us to engage with courage and conviction, knowing that the future we desire depends on the steps we take today. Marcia Whittaker's journey stands as a powerful reminder that the true measure of success is not the wealth amassed or the deals signed, but the lives transformed and the barriers broken along the way. When a single voice fueled by vision, perseverance, and unwavering belief rises to meet indifference and prejudice, it has the power to reshape not just communities, but the very fabric of society. Her story teaches us that change is not a gift bestowed by the powerful. It is a responsibility embraced by the courageous. It is the sum of countless individual actions, each rooted in hope and personal accountability. It calls on all of us, not just leaders, but neighbors, friends, and everyday citizens, to step into our own roles as architects of a better future. The $3 billion backing was not merely a transaction, it was a declaration that unity, resilience, and strategic boldness can overturn even the most daunting obstacles. It showed that no matter how entrenched the system, there is always room for transformation when ordinary people decide to act extraordinarily. Today, Marcia's story echoes as a rallying cry, a call to recognize our shared humanity, to believe in possibility, and to commit ourselves to the work ahead. The future belongs to those who refuse to accept limits, who choose hope over fear, and who understand that the power to change the world starts with each of us. As we reflect on this journey, let it inspire us to move forward together, fueled by conviction and compassion, ready to build communities that honor the dignity and potential of every individual. The road may be long, but the promise of a better tomorrow is worth every step.